XX. Setting the scene. The king himself is rode forth to view their battle. King Henry V, Act 4, Scene 3. "Can she stand up?" asked Hill as they drove away from Erica Collingwood's apartment. "If there's any doubt in your mind, Barry, now is the time to talk about it." "I think so," said Brewer. "In any case, she's the only hope we have of pulling this off from the inside. I can do some of it myself, but you have to realize that I'm a marginal player in the industry. My clients mostly end up doing bit parts on soaps and sitcoms, and my clout barely registers as a burp on the Hollywood Richter scale. I could probably cop that crucial key card to the trapdoor if I had to. Enough money to one of the Royale staff should do the trick. But in the subsequent investigation, my presence on the scene would stand out like a cow in church to anyone familiar with the pecking order. And you can bet the FBI and the LAPD will be giving this a full court press. Nor could I get 7 armed people into the hotel and conceal them for some hours until it's time to move. We've got to have Erica's help. Until we get some indication otherwise, we'll have to assume that Erica will hold up her end," said Randall practically. "We still have to work out the exact details of getting our team out of her hotel suite and into their firing positions undetected. I'm worried about all those security cameras in the Kodak, since we have to assume that all the monitors in the security control room will be manned, and there will be multiple observers keeping track of everything that goes on in every corridor and accessible area during the ceremonies. Like you said earlier, we most likely won't be the only people trying to sneak in and crash the Oscars on the night. We need to find some way to take out the camera system for at least a minute or two while our people get into the building, make their way up to those projection booths, get inside and get covered down on the target area. We don't want the shooting to start prematurely before we actually have the glitterati themselves in sight. I've got volunteer Kellerman working on the info we've been able to get on the security console setup and the wiring in the control room, but he hasn't been able to come up with anything yet," said Hill. "Looking at floor plans and diagrams is all very well and good, but I need to see where the tickle's going to go down," said Randall decisively. "There's no other way. I've got to get into that theater at night and have a prowl round. Preferably in the wee hours of the morning when there's no one about. I think Cat Eyes needs to come with me as well, so he can eyeball the firing positions and the kill zone. That chintzy guided tour the theater management gives the tourists won't cut it. I also need to meet that Centurion guard who's going to be our man on the inside, so at least one of us who will be inside on the night knows who the hell he is and what he looks like. We can sort out what he'll be doing on the night, and hopefully we won't shoot our own bloke. You need to set that up for me, Reppy. We can go in as maintenance men or cleaning crew or something like that. It will take a couple of days to get you fake badges and swipe cards made," said Brewer. "Yeah, and we're cutting it fine as it is," said Randall. "All the more need for speed." "I'll try to set it up for tomorrow night, but it might have to be the night after," said Brewer. "Our guy's only a sergeant, and he has to be really careful in what he does and what he accesses. Centurion spies on their own people to make sure they're not being naughty." It was in fact 2 nights later at 8 o'clock in the evening that Charlie Randall and Cat Eyes Lockhart appeared at the rear alley service entrance to the Kodak Theater. They were driving a stolen and sanitized van that had been resprayed with the logo of California Cool, a legitimate heating and air conditioning company in the valley, and they were dressed in greasy coveralls marked the cool dudes with filthy baseball caps on their heads. They carried long, battered metal toolboxes, each containing a top tray of tools and electrical fixtures, with Uzi submachine guns, and extra magazines stowed in the bottom of each box, as well as light handguns concealed in the tool belts around their waists. From their shirt pocket flaps dangled official-looking Kodak Theater contractor badges, and around their necks hung working contractor key swipe cards, all false but which hopefully they wouldn't actually have to use, lest the computer in the control room detect something hinky about them. They were admitted at the service entrance door by Centurion Shift Sergeant Sterling Farrell, a thick-set man in his early 40s in the white shirt, visored cap, and black trousers of the company. Farrell bore a tattoo on his muscular right forearm of a bayonet, piercing a turbaned serpent with the beard of an imam. The bayonet was wielded in the talons of an American bald eagle with wings rampant, and the number 101 over the whole design. The greetings were short. Lockhart looked at the tattoo. 101 stones airborne? He asked. Screaming Eagles, hoorah, Farrell confirmed. Sterling Farrell, ex-staff sergeant, Baghdad, Tikrit, Shiraz, Tehran, Cairo, and Gaza. Are you Dundee or Jones tonight? Not that there's any point in your using a handle since your picture's all over Fox News every week. Guess not. Jesse Lockhart, said Kat, holding out his hand. Baghdad, Tikrit, Ramadi, Shiraz, Damascus, and Khartoum. Yeah, I know, said Farrell, shaking his hand. You wouldn't remember me, but I saw you work once in Tikrit. This is Crocodile Dundee, said Lockhart. You'll know why we call him that when he opens his mouth. How much time have we got, mate? Asked Randall. I'm officially on lunch now, said Farrell. That's half an hour, but I can stretch it out a bit before I have to get back to checking in on my rounds. We took the day tour, said Randall. We saw the lobby and all the movie junk, and the inside of the theater itself, and they let us up on stage briefly, and that's about it. Tonight we want to scope the backstage areas and the upper levels and corridors, and get as close to the security control room as we dare. From upstairs they could hear the sound of voices, mostly Spanish, as well as banging and thumping and hammering, and the sound of a radio or CD deck playing salsa music. Sounds like you've got a full house tonight, commented Randall. Yeah, that's why I suggested to Ripley that you come on second shift and not at 2 in the morning, said Farrell. You're more likely to go unnoticed when there's a lot of workmen and setup crew in the building. They knock off at 11, and in the early hours you'd be out of place. There are cameras everywhere. I'll point them out to you as we go. The control room only has 2 officers in it right now. One of them's a Sheba who spends all her time yakking on her cell phone when she thinks I'm not around, and the other one's a big Indio from down in Yucatan who seems to barely speak English. He may be smarter than he looks, but if he is, he hides it well. They'll see us, but they will just assume I'm escorting some contractors around the building while you work on the ventilation or something. After the big night, though, the FBI and DHS will go over all the digitals with a microscope, and they'll spot us together, which is why I need to do a Houdini act ASAP after the blowout. Don't worry, mate. We'll have you on your way to Portland before the smoke clears away, Randall promised him. What exactly are they building out there in the theater? They're knocking together the prefab platform at the rear of the seating area that will hold all the television cameras and crew and gear for the live coverage, and also the side platforms that will hold additional cameras, boom mics, and so on. Let's go then, said Farrell. We'll be taking the stairs. There are cameras in all the elevators, and they might get a close-up that might interest somebody. What exactly do you want to see? He asked as they mounted one flight and came out behind the stage. The banging and sawing was louder now, coming from the theater outside. Let's start this private tour at the old green room, suggested Randall. I want to orient myself starting from the entrance to the so-called secret passage that ain't so bloody secret, the famous trap door. Farrell led them around the rear of the stage, where a wide and cavernous bay with a linoleum floor was stacked high with props, furniture, speakers, music stands, chairs, and other impedimenta. He pointed to the left. That door there is a passageway under the stage itself that leads into the orchestra pit, he said. Can we get a deco? Asked Randall. Wait a bit, until the camera moves away, said Farrell, nodding up at the silvery metallic box with the red light on the wall, which was fanning the area. That's the only one in this backstage area, which is a bit of luck, he said. If you can keep your eye on it, and you can see when it hits the far left traverse and starts to swing back. There is an interval of about 15 seconds when the far right of the backstage is out of vision, and vice versa. There's usually enough junk piled up back here, so someone who is nimble enough to dodge around and go to ground and hide when the camera swings onto them would be able to get across the entire floor here unseen. That the kind of thing you guys are looking for? The very thing, replied Randall. The camera slowly swung away. Now, said Farrell. They moved quickly over to the door beneath the rear of the stage. Farrell shoved on the bar, the door opened, and they entered a small passageway with a linoleum-tiled floor and painted cinderblock walls, illuminated by dim fluorescent lighting. No lock on the door? Asked Lockhart with interest. No alarms either now, said Farrell. They removed the lock on this side some years ago because the orchestra musicians and stagehands were constantly going back and forth, losing their key cards, and the alarm register was on a printout, so we'd use up a whole roll of paper almost during one rehearsal with all the swiping and alarm records. The employees and musicians were constantly complaining about having to swipe in on both ends, and so the company compromised and removed the lock, and the alarm on this door to quit their bitching, and also to save some paper and records keeping in the control room. But the far end door, the one that actually goes into the orchestra pit, will be keycard locked during the ceremony to prevent assorted weirdos from getting into the theater area and jumping in front of the cameras, although that end will not be alarmed. Want to get a look-see into the orchestra pit? Don't think that will be necessary, said Randall. The plan doesn't call for any volunteer actually to enter the theater seating area or the lobby except possibly myself. When we figure out how to take down those cameras, that's going to be a problem, admitted Farrell. They won't even let me into the control room while the show's running, even if I could figure out some way to explain being off my post. The control room is sealed from 5:30 on when we go live. Nobody gets in or out except Marvin Hagerman, the company VP who will actually be running the show. I am damned if I can see any way to do it other than just plain smash into the control room and trash the place and everybody in it. Well, we'll keep that as a last resort, said Randall. Let's also leave that part of our tour for last. Where will you be on the night? In charge of the main entrance detail, the metal detectors and so forth. Usually it's a pretty good gig because you get to see all the celebs come in, although VIPs, needless to say, aren't put through the metal detector. Pity we can't get one of the stars to bring in some guns or explosives. Lockhart and Randall looked at one another but said nothing. If you can work the front door in somehow, I'm your man, or if you need me somewhere else, I can try to make up some reason to switch off posts, or get somewhere I need to be, but it would be a bit iffy, said the guard sergeant. Got it, said Randall. In the meantime, it strikes me that this passageway here would be an ideal jumping-off point for when I yell lights, camera, action. You've worked an actual Oscar night here before? The last 3, said Farrell. I was one of the guys who managed to drag Brittany Malloy's butt-naked ass off the catwalk last year and stop her from jumping off. For your information, she wears falsies and she's got needle tracks on her arm. I was also one of the guys who taped her mouth and dragged her through the trapdoor to the Royale, so I'm familiar with the trapdoor on both ends. Any Centurion people have the swipe card for it? Asked Randall. There is one in the security control room, but it's under lock and key in the arms locker, and it's inserted in a slot that's alarmed if someone tries to take it out, said Farrell. Only the shift commander has authorization to remove it. I don't have occasion to use it in the normal course of my job. I'm not senior enough to get into the arms locker, and I don't see any way I could extract it without getting caught. What else is in the arms locker? Asked Lockhart. 5 fully automatic M16 seconds with special BATFE permits, 1,000 rounds of ammunition, 8 sonic stun grenades, a tranquilizer rifle and 3 darts, said Farrell. A tranquilizer gun? Asked Randall in astonishment. That's for use when somebody has to be taken down, but they're too valuable to the studios to shoot or tase, said Farrell. Usually some big star who's stoned or drunk out of their mind, to the point where they're completely out of control. We would have used it on the Malloy chick last year, but we were scared she'd fall off the catwalk and upstage the best picture presentation in every sense of the term. Her bra and panties raining down on stage was bad enough. If you've seen enough, let's go. Farrell peeped out of the door and watched the camera. Now, they moved swiftly across the floor and made it through an archway into a carpeted corridor before the camera swung around and caught them. Okay, that's the green room, or was up until this year, said Farrell, pointing to 2 large double oaken doors. It's locked, and the doors are alarmed. It will be locked on the night as well, to make sure the celebs don't sneak in there and start doing bad acts, but stay out front and be seen to behave like the studios want them to. There are no cameras in this hallway, though, which was to make sure the big shots could show their butts in privacy when there was a green room. The trapdoor is here. He led them down a short side corridor and showed them the steel door, with a blinking red electronic box of black steel. There's the swipe lock? It's locked now? Asked Lockhart. Yes, said Farrell. Right, said Randall. So let's assume we've got our team this far, and we're inside the building. Show me how to get from here back to that orchestra pit passageway unobserved. Farrell retraced their steps back to the open archway that gave into backstage. The camera is right above this entrance, he said. All you have to do is lean out a bit and look up, and since you're directly under the camera, you won't be seen. And now. They easily made it back to the passage under the stage and inside the corridor before the camera swung back. That was no problem, but what if there are people back here on the night who see our guys? Asked Lockhart. There shouldn't be, said Farrell. One of our security procedures is that during the actual ceremonies after the opening number, this area is off limits. The dressing rooms for the dancers and review talent are one floor down in the basement, and they're soundproofed. We don't let anybody get this close to the stage during the ceremonies themselves. And if we see any gatecrashers or drunks on the cameras, we come back here and hustle them out before they can do anything that disrupts things, or start yelling obscenities that can be heard on stage, or anything like that. No guards back here? Asked Randall. There will be a man on the catwalks, but he will be watching the stage and the audience, and also the access doors up there to make sure we don't have any more Brittany Malloy incidents, said Farrell. He won't be looking down here at all and could only see the back part of backstage anyway, even if he leaned over. Make sure you stick close along the rear curtain here, and he won't be able to see you even if he's looking this way. If there's anyone down here, and they see the team gaining entry, then they're so well. That's what silencers are for, said Randall grimly. Now we need to do a walk up to the third-floor corridor and those projection booths. Which way? Stairwells on either side of the backstage, said Farrell. Remember, the theater itself is in an oval shape, and the corridors leading from each of those stairwells to the projection booths are pretty much identical on both sides of the building, north and south. Okay, cameras to the left now. They left the corridor. I need to warn you that there are cameras in the stairwells and in the corridors, and we're going to be seen. Like I said, those two mopes in the control room probably won't take any notice since I'm with you. But you need to kind of act like air conditioning mechanics if we meet anybody. They met no one. They got to the third floor, turned right down the plum-carpeted hall, and reached the short side corridor leading to the north wall projection booth. Can I get inside this booth? Asked Lockhart as they ducked down the hall. I figured you might want to, and so I disarmed the locks and alarms on both of them before you guys came in tonight, said Farrell. Good man, said Randall approvingly. Farrell opened the door and they entered a larger room than they had expected. The projector is in the retracted position now, said Farrell, pointing to a massive machine on a wheeled caisson. On the night it will be forward, and the lens sticking out that bay there. You'll have to move it back. Maybe not, said Kat. Actually, I think I can take the right side and my partner the left, and it will serve as extra cover against return fire coming from the theater floor. He peeped cautiously down onto the floor and saw a gang of Mexican laborers setting up the tables in the VIP area, right in front of the orchestra pit. Oh, this is going to be choice, said Lockhart enthusiastically. Beautiful. The other riflemen and myself are going to have to use open sights, because we'll be breaking down our weapons to get them inside the hotel, and the telescopic sights would lose zero and throw our aim off. But at this range we won't need them. Kentucky windage is all we'll need. That's what, maybe 100 feet to the near edge of the kill zone and 200 to the far side, 130 or 40 feet to the stage itself? Good angle, high enough for visibility, but not so sharp as to make us lean forward and out and expose ourselves unduly, like we'd have to if we were in those private boxes. Good clear shot at most of the south wall boxes as well, and Ron will have the same vantage point over there for the boxes on the north wall. One guard sitting outside the door of each booth? Queried Randall. Right. And one projectionist inside, Farrell told them. Kat, the main surprise requirement is for you guys to get up here fast enough once I yell go, before anyone can call those guards on their radio and let them know something. Hitting the fan, giving them time to draw their weapons, and maybe alert the audience and get our targets to start dropping down or moving or taking evasive action, Randall pointed out. That's why we can't afford to have the fire team seen on the closed-circuit monitors. Some good news, though, said Farrell. They've changed procedure a bit, and those key cards I gave you will now work on the projection booths. You won't have to take one off the guard, dead or otherwise. By the way, according to the assignment sheet, there will be niggers on both doors. One of them is just a fat, lazy slob whose weapon probably isn't even in firing order. The other is a big Haitian with filed teeth who's a violent psychopath, and whom Centurion usually uses for intimidation-type jobs and head-knocking. They didn't dare deny him work on Oscar night and the overtime and the bonus that goes with it, since he's just the type that might go and shoot up the head office, but they're trying to keep him out of sight and away from the celebs in case he breaks bad. Neither of them will be missed. I said your keycards will work, but that's unless something spooks the contract supervisor or the client before then, some last-minute threat or warning from the cops or DHS, and they change all the encryption and issue new cards, in which case we're up shit creek, he concluded. Cross your fingers on that, mate, said Randall. So far we haven't picked up on so much as a whisper that they even know the NVA is in town. Farrell nodded. If they had, you'd better believe they would be going batshit right now. They'd either cancel the award ceremonies or seal this place up so tight a fly couldn't get in. Right. I'm starting to get the germ of an idea here, said Randall. The plans you scammed for us show some kind of heating and AC access area behind the control room. Can we get down there now? Farrell led them out the door, turned right, then down the hall and into another stairwell. 3 floors down there was another hallway where Farrell turned left. No need to avoid the cameras, he said. This place we're going is called the first floor interstitial area, and there's all kinds of ducts and air pumps in there. There's 4 of them in the building to control the ventilation system. It won't look unusual for air conditioning mechanics to be going in there. Inside the interstitial, the floors were unpolished planks. The walls were padded with pink fiberglass insulation, and there was a steady roar from the tangled skein of large square aluminum ducts. No cameras? Asked Lockhart. Nope, said Farrell. Just in the corridor outside. Good, said Randall. But I think I know what you're looking for, Digger, and it's not in here, said Farrell. You're hoping for a circuit box of some kind, right? No such luck. The electrical system for the control room doesn't come in here at all. It's hooked into the main comm and power cables in a junction box under the floor of the control room itself. Believe me, I've had my eye out for any way we could cut a cable or a circuit breaker or something, once we figured out which one to cut, and disable some or all of those cameras. But it's not in here, just the air ducts. Right, just the air ducts, agreed Randall. He looked over on the wall where a series of blueprints were mounted on a corkboard for the convenience of the building engineers and AC mechanics. Mighty nice of 'em to leave this out here for us, eh? He studied the schematic for several minutes. So what it boils down to is this. We can't figure out any way to disable the security camera system either completely or partially. There's no cable we can conveniently cut, at least none we know where to find. The individual cameras are set so high and inaccessible that disabling each one separately would be too slow and cumbersome, and would tip the guards off too early that something was up, and they'd be reacting before our blokes can get into position. That about sum it up? That's it, agreed Lockhart. So if we can't take out the cameras themselves, we take out the blokes watching them on the telly, said Randall. He moved along one wall and found one of the air ducts, a big one about 4 feet square. He checked a number plate bolted into the sheeting, then went back to the blueprint on the wall and checked that. He went back to the duct and leaned over to examine an intake grill about 18 by 24 inches. Simple Phillips head screws. Right, that's how we do it. If that plan over there is accurate, this duct feeds air conditioning into the security control room. I get in here, and you 6 get into place in the jumping-off point in that little passage below the stage by 6:48 p.m. I unscrew this plate, pop 2 or 3 CS tear gas grenades inside, and within a matter of seconds, every Centurion guard in the control room will be bolting through the door. Do they have any gas masks inside, Comrade Farrell? There are 3 or 4, I think, in the arms locker, said Farrell, to which only the site supervisor has the necessary access code on his swipe card, which on the night will be that operations VP I mentioned. You say 6:48? Or thereabouts, said Randall, during the best screenplay presentation. We start our move when the presentation gets going, take out the guards, get into the booth and cover down, and as the faggots begin their acceptance speech, we start blasting. How do you know who's going to win? Asked Farrell, curiously. Apparently these 2 bugger boys are going to get it because there's an affirmative action quota for queers, and it's their turn this year, said Randall. According to our source, it's pretty common knowledge. But whoever wins, that's the presentation where we rewrite the script in red ink. Okay, so if Hagerman is in the control room then, just before 6:48, I'll find some excuse to call him out to the front entrance, said Farrell. When your gas hits, the only man who can get into the locker with not only the gas masks but the heavy weapons will be out of the control room. They'll have to beat feet out of there. Some of the gas will seep out into the lobby and into the restaurant and bar, and raise hell with all the various paparazzi, drivers and bits and pieces of entourage who hang out there during the ceremonies because they can't get a seat. There will be so much confusion they won't know what's going on until the shooting starts. The doors to the theater itself are closed during the presentations, and they're soundproof so people in the audience can hear the opera or whatever is playing without interference. By the time any gas gets into the theater area or anyone notices anything going on behind them in the lobby, you guys should already have begun your Hebe harvest. Hell, I'll toss a couple more canisters into the lobby just for devilment on the way out, said Randall. On the day before the Oscars, for the first time, Task Force Director's cut was all gathered in one place. A large private home with a green lawn and hissing sprinklers on 20th Street in Santa Monica. It was very risky, and some of the crew were on sentry duty and would be briefed later by their team leaders. But this was the most important operation that the Northwest Volunteer Army had undertaken to date. Every single man or woman was being utilized in some capacity or other, and every one of them had to be brought into the big picture. The only people missing were the local contacts who would participate, that is Barry Brewer, Sterling Farrell, and Erica Collingwood. They had no need to meet the entire Portland task force, and the task force had no need to meet them. They were all gathered in the large living room. Before we begin, I think we need to congratulate Quartermaster Lieutenant Ekstrom on her first active service operation, said Hill with a smile, standing up in front of them. There was a scattering of cheers and applause. Stealing a police car is active service? Asked Christina. If you risk getting shot at, it's active service, said Hill. Are both the squad cars hidden away somewhere safe? Yes, in that private garage I showed you, said Christina. Volunteers McGreedy and Garriser do good paint work, and they have redetailed both squad cars already to change the numbers. You can't tell the difference. I want to add a vote of thanks to the absent but very talented indeed Mr. Ripley. In addition to all our luxury accommodation, well, luxury compared to what we're used to, he's been fantastic about getting me everything I need, mostly from the prop and costume rooms of the movie studios themselves, if you can believe it. We've got 2 Los Angeles cop uniforms complete with belts and accessories, those AC mechanic outfits Mick and Kat used the other night, 6 tuxes for the rest of the team, you name it. He even offered to try and dig up a formal evening gown with some kind of long sleeves and high back to hide Kiki's tattoos if she wanted to go in that way. There was laughter, which would mean me having to run around and fight in high heels. I don't think so, said Kiki. I'll run the operation down for you from beginning to end, said Hill. Hit the lights, please, somebody. The lights dimmed and one overhead projector cast a floor plan of the Kodak Theater onto the wall, while a second showed the plan of the Hollywood Royale Hotel. The actual infiltration of the theater and the assault will be carried out by 7 personnel. Red Fire Team will consist of volunteers Lockhart, Wingo, and McGee. Gold Team will consist of volunteers Kolchak, Gauss, and Washburn. Lieutenant Randall will be in command as assault group leader, with 3rd Section assets also on the inside. You have been briefed on the general situation, so that you know we intend to conceal ourselves prior to the attack right in the middle of the enemy, on the 14th floor of a hotel full of partying movie stars. Possibly the most unusual camouflage ever attempted in the history of warfare since the Trojan horse. We thought that our contact was going to be compelled to obtain a suite on a floor below the 2 that have been reserved for the Hollywood celebrities. But I have been informed that we will in fact have access to a suite that is on the lower of those 2 party floors. I will not release the room number, except to the personnel who will need to know, but we should be able to move out of the Hollywood Royale and into the Kodak completely undetected, since the security cameras have been turned off on those floors to prevent the recording for posterity of these high-toned people's gross behavior, with the subsequent risk of sale of compromising clips to tabloid newspapers, blackmail, etc. As always, comrades, the gods favor us. I've noticed that happens a lot since we decided to quit running around street corners holding signs and wearing silly costumes, and took up the gun. Amen, spoke up one of the volunteers. Never doubt that he is with us, or they, as some of us prefer. Hill smiled. The suite has now been obtained and occupied, and some of our material already deposited there, including certain crucial electronic key cards. The assault group's entry to the hotel will begin at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning on the receiving dock of the Hollywood Royale Hotel. when comrades Bishop and Valdemar will appear in the guise of delivery drivers bringing in some boxes for a party to be held in the penthouse. Those boxes will contain the weapons, ammunition, and equipment that will be needed for the assault. You've got that covered, Chris? Mr. Ripley again, said Christina. La Lightning delivery van, 2 sets of coveralls, hand trucks and all. Good, said Hill. Comrades Bishop and Valdemar will be met at the loading dock by a person who is a 3rd section asset, and they will be assisted past the check-in and into the service elevator. They will deposit their boxes in the hotel suite, and then they will be clearly seen by the security cameras to leave the same way they came. What person, sir? Asked Sue Valdemar. Right, let's deal with that subject. For you inside people, said Hill, there will be someone in the hotel, and in the theater later during the ceremonies, who is shaping up to be a vitally important asset to the cause of Northwest independence in this matter, and who will continue to be invaluable in the future. If you have ever watched much TV or seen many movies, the chances are that you will recognize this person, or think you do, because as far as we are concerned, this person does not exist. He or she was never there, and you will forget that you ever saw him or her. You will not mention his or her name, not to your comrades, not among yourselves, not to anyone else, not until long after the war when military secrecy regulations are repealed. This person is risking their life and everything they have in the world in order to help our new country come into being, and he or she has a lot more to lose than most. It would be tragic and heartbreaking if he or she perished because somebody got starstruck and couldn't keep their lips zipped. I repeat, he or she does not exist. Even under torture, if it comes to that, this person was never there. Are we all clear on this? I never met this person, yet already I don't remember them, said Lockhart. Hill nodded. Good. Now, once the weapons are in place, the infiltration of the Hollywood Royale Hotel will begin shortly thereafter. Each team member will enter the hotel separately. You will be dressed as civilians, reporters and fans and bit actor types, and you'll go in at roughly 1-hour intervals, unarmed in the event you have to pass through any metal detectors. The hotel is going to be full of people having various things to do with the Academy Awards, so you should be able to pass unnoticed. Lieutenant Randall will go first. You will make your way without exciting any suspicion to the hotel suite number you will be given. You will also be given a code knock. Once inside the rooms, you will collect your weapons, change into tuxedos, including Comrade McGee, which will be of some benefit to her, since if she wears male attire, the enemy may not realize afterward that they're looking for at least one female suspect. You will be given party masks, so that if you have to go out into the hall, people will assume you're doped and drunken celebrities and entourage headed up to the penthouse for the main orgy. A word of advice on the tuxes: make sure you are wearing good, well-broken-in black men's shoes. Kick, you need to get a pair of black running shoes or something you can live with in there with the morning delivery, or wear them when you enter the hotel. You guys are going to have to be running and maybe climbing, and you don't want to be doing that in new, hard patent leather shoes that will blister your feet and distract you. While in the hotel room, you will also assemble your web belts. This belt will hold a radio and a throwaway cell phone. The cell phone is for emergency contact with the outside at numbers you will have already pre-programmed into the phone. The teams will actually communicate with each other, and with Lieutenant Randall using the radios, not the phones. The belts will also contain 2 each hand grenades, 1 gas mask, 1 smoke grenade each, and a holstered automatic with a silencer, mostly, but a few, as well. You guys can sort out who gets what handgun when you're getting ready to roll. Charlie Randall took up the thread. We intend to strike during the acceptance speech for Best Screenplay, which starts at approximately 6:48 p.m. I am informed these ceremonies run on rails to make sure all the sponsored advertising gets in, and we can pretty much assume that everything will be on time. This means that allowing several minutes for the presenters reading the nominations, we open fire at about 6:51. We're in luck again. The schedule calls for no film clips from the nominated movies to be shown for Best Screenplay, so we'll be able to get into the projection booths without interrupting anything in progress. At 6:30 p.m., Sharp Eye myself will leave the hotel suite, dressed as an air conditioning maintenance bloke like I was the other night. I will enter the private elevator and take it to the hotel garage level. I will then enter the corridor leading to the Kodak Theater with an electronic key card that will have been provided for me. Volunteers Lockhart and Kolchak will also have one of these cards. Let's hope it works, or the whole mission is an abort. I will enter the theater, and I will make my way along a route that I have determined with one of our inside assets to be the best and least likely to be surveilled. If I am challenged, I will eliminate the challenger with a silenced pistol. I will enter the interstitial area here and take up my position, he indicated with a cursor on the diagram. In the meantime, at 6:40 p.m., the rest of the team will depart the hotel suite, having first donned latex surgical gloves. Your faces will be concealed in party masks, and you will be wearing your web belts, and you will be carrying your heavy weapons in canvas gym-type bags that we will provide. You will take the same route and enter the Kodak Theater. And there are no cameras at all along this underground route, you say? Asked Machine Gun Mike Gauss incredulously. Not until you reach the open archway door into the backstage bay and storage area, confirmed Randall. It's ironic that we are taking advantage of a deliberate lapse in security on the part of the enemy, which was created so as to allow these most privileged members of the American ruling elite to commit acts of revolting perversion and debauchery, unimpeded by any observation or censure, said Hill with a chuckle. There are no security cameras or guards in these corridors and elevators here and in the Kodak, in order to save the stars from the consequences of their behavior, an immunity that they have enjoyed for generations. Now, tomorrow night, some of them are going to pay for that immunity with their lives. Poetic justice, I'd say. I'll go over with you how to get past the one rotating camera and into the jumping-off area, which is the mouth of this corridor under the stage leading to the orchestra pit, here, said Randall, pointing with his cursor. The fire teams will need to get into the jumping-off point, get your heavy weapons out of the bags, assembled and locked and loaded, and all the extra ammo pouches and gas mask carriers onto your web belts. Oh, and each of you will have been issued a standard dark blue wool ski mask, said Hill. When you get under cover in the orchestra pit passageway, in addition to getting all your weapons together, I want you to take off the party masks and stow them, and put on the ski masks. I don't want this historic hit to be carried out by volunteers wearing the faces of Bozo the Clown, Beavis and Butthead, or Bill Clinton, or any nonsense like that. I want those security digitals to show proper terrorist ski masks, okay? I know that sounds silly, but we don't want the public to see images from the cameras of our volunteers dressed like clowns or Dracula. That's the kind of thing that sticks in people's minds. Once you get everything out of the bags, fold them up and put them all into one bag, the big duffel. And remember that on your way out you must stop briefly and pick that bag up and take it with you. We don't want the FBI finding it and getting fingerprints and hair and whatnot off the party masks. Right, I figure about 2 minutes for all of that once you get undercover in the corridor entryway, picked up Randall again. I need to hear from you when you are in place and ready to move out. I will already have removed the intake vent grill from the air conditioning duct. I will be watching the progress of the ceremonies on my handheld phone with the wireless TV. When I hear that you lads and lassie are in place, and the best screenplay presenter is making her opening spiel, I will put on my own gas mask and pop 3 CS grenades into the intake vent. I give it 30 seconds before everybody's out of that control room, blind and puking. We also have the promise of some kind of diversion in the lobby from one of our 3-sec people, so hopefully no one will notice anything in the theater itself. 3 canisters is a lot of gas, and there may be some blowback through the air vents. Do not put on your gas mask unless you feel the gas actually starting to hit you. Hopefully we'll be out of there before it really starts to permeate through the building, which will further hinder enemy recovery and first investigatory efforts as well. 30 seconds after I pop the gas cat, I'm going to yell on the radio for you to go, and then you go, 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 said Randall. There shouldn't be anyone in the control room left to see you. The 2 fire teams will leave the jumping-off place and move on the double up the stairs to the 3rd floor, pop the guards with silenced pistols, get into the projection booths, disable the projectionists however indicated by their race, and assume firing position. The full auto cover men, Comrades Wingo and Gauss, will position outside at the mouth of the little hall that leads to each booth, and will cut down anyone who comes down the main corridor, thus protecting the other 2 volunteers and their team while they take out the targets. Kat, you get to open the festivities, and I've already indicated when. Try to take both those bugger boys down with your first shots. It's done. They're out of here, said Lockhart. We want a mad minute of shock and awe, said Hill. The maddest ever, because remember, this is going to be on live nationwide TV. Kat, you and Ron will both fire 20 well-aimed rounds apiece, and remember, after those 2 initial faggots for camera effect, you're going for the Burger Kings, the big kikes. Mark your targets, put a round in them as close to dead center as you can in all the chaos, and then try for another. It's going to be hard, I know, like firing into a tornado and trying to hit a specific straw. 1 round per target, unless you know you've got a really big sheenie in your sights, like Sid Glick or Alan Adler, or Jaime Hirschfeld. The Grenadiers will throw both their grenades, 1 each as soon as the firing begins, and a second after approximately 30 seconds. They will also open fire on full automatic, into what will almost certainly be a screaming vortex of sheer madness, concentrating on the very important person circle in front of the orchestra pit. There will be no innocent parties down there. Anyone who rates a seat in that section is Hollywood up to their eyeballs, and guilty as sin. Ideally not one glitterati pig or bitch who sits down at one of those little Parisian cafe tables to pose for us unwashed masses in all their haute couture glory should make it out of that theater alive. But especially not Jews. Bear in mind what all this is in aid of, comrades. Hollywood is possibly the greatest weapon the Jews have against our race, maybe even more powerful and dangerous in some ways than their control of the federal government and of international banking. Hollywood is the biggest leg of that unholy tripod, and we have to knock it out from under them. Oh, and by the way, could you also see if you can spare a few bursts for the private boxes you'll see across the way? Asked Randall. You snipers too. Make sure you take a look up there and see if you can spot some of our main targets who will be swanning themselves, especially studio execs. Ron will be a little slower to fire than me, because he packs an M24, which is bolt action and has only a 10-round magazine capacity, pointed out Lockhart. He'll have to reload, but we all get the idea. Okay, now, the big point we've all been wondering about. Extraction. Once our mad minute is up, how do we get the hell out of there? Same way you came in, only a lot faster and with a lot less stealth, said Hill. Back down the stairs, making sure you pick up that duffel bag with all the other folded bags and masks and bits and pieces in it on the way. Out, back into the trap door, at the double, and anybody who gets in your way or shoots at you gets knocked out of the way. Once you get out through the Royale end, you do not go back up into the hotel. You go through the underground garage along the far wall, down low behind the parked cars, which should keep you out of range of the cameras in the Royale security control room. At the Highland Avenue entrance, you will be met by volunteers Eckert and Palevsky, each wearing the uniform of a Los Angeles police officer and each driving a brand spanking new LAPD squad car, courtesy of Ace and Christina's hot wiring ability. Red team goes in one car, gold team goes in the second, they hit the sirens and you're out of there. What about Comrade Dundee, sir? Asked Kiki. I will follow, but I have to make a little detour, explained Charlie. I have to get back into the Royale, get into their security control room and pop out the hard drive containing their digital recordings of the day's activities in the hotel, so that the feds will hopefully have some difficulty in figuring out how we pulled it all off. I have my own rendezvous planned from there. Well, mates, that's the skeleton of it. There's still a lot of detail to be fleshed out, but any questions so far? Worst case scenario, Oscar, spoke up Lockhart. Suppose something goes wrong after we get in and it's obvious before we can get into position and make our coordinated move that they're on to us? If that's the case, or if you do not get the go signal from me by the time the best screenplay presentation ends, what's next, Oscar? Randall asked Hill. Best director, said Hill. If you don't hear from me by the time best director starts, then assume I am either dead or captured. Then you go up and out onto the stage from behind the curtain, waste whoever is up there at the podium, then drop down, take what cover you can behind sets or props or whatever, and start blasting away into the VIP section and the private boxes from the stage itself, Randall told them. It's a bloody sloppy way to do this. You'll have footlights and spotlights in your eyes, and you'll be all lit up and good targets for the enemy, but if something does go south, I'll be damned if I am exiting stage left without taking some of these effete Hollywood bastards with me, and I presume that all of you feel the same. If we get trapped, then we go down fighting. I know I don't have to ask if you're all up for that. You wouldn't have been chosen for this mission if you weren't. One comment, said Hill. I'm sure that at some time all of you must have seen bootleg copies of Braveheart even after it was banned, along with the passion in all Mel Gibson's other work. You remember the final scene as the Scottish hero dies crying out freedom. In that worst-case scenario, if God forbid it should occur, try to make sure as you go down that these Jew motherfuckers hear you shout freedom. I want them to understand